I never told my wife that I secretly controlled nearly half of her father's empire, a stake valued at over $20 billion. For over 2 decades, she believed I was just a modest consultant, driving a decade-old car and living a simple life. Then on a Tuesday in October, everything changed with a dinner invitation. I accepted, curious to see how her parents would treat a man they viewed as a failure. The smiles were stiff and the questions were sharp. In the middle of the meal, her father slid a leather envelope across the table, and I realized this was never about family. This story is about to take a turn you won't expect. Before we continue, let me know in the comments where you're watching from, and if you've ever sat at a dinner table knowing a secret that could change everything. The message arrived on a Tuesday morning. I'm 51, and after 21 years of marriage to Julia, I can read the temperature of her silence. She was staring at her phone while her coffee went cold, a sure sign her parents were plotting. The text was formal and chilling. Dinner Friday at 7:00 p.m. for an important family matter. When the Harringtons get that formal, someone usually gets hurt. What Julia didn't know was that I'd been waiting for this. For years, I watched her father, Douglas, look at me like a problem to be solved. Even our daughter, Quinn, had begun to treat me like an embarrassment. They saw a man in a 9-year-old Honda living in a modest East Austin home. They didn't see the man who, 25 years ago, inherited a small fortune and began quietly buying up Douglas's debt-ridden company through anonymous entities. By our wedding, I owned 42%. Today, I own 47% of the Harrington Development Group. Douglas Harrington technically works for me, he just doesn't know it yet. Julia asked me to promise I wouldn't let them bully me. I promised her they would see exactly who I am. She has stood by me for 2 decades, choosing our simple life over her parents' world of Spanish colonial estates and country clubs. She defended me when they called my career a dead end, never realizing I was the one funding the very expansions Douglas credited to his own brilliance. My grandfather, who co-founded the firm, left me a letter with a mission. If Douglas falls, help him, not because he deserves it, but for the sake of his family. Save the company, but try to save his soul. I've followed those orders for 25 years. Friday arrived with a heavy Texas heat. As we drove toward the hills of Westlake, the modest houses gave way to iron gates and circular drives. Julia told me she used to think this excess was normal until she saw my first studio apartment and realized she'd never been happier than eating spaghetti on a hot plate. Her mother, Evelyn, had tried to buy me off during our engagement, offering trips to Europe or cash to disappear. I refused it all. Now, we were pulling into their 4-acre fortress. I parked our old Honda behind a row of luxury cars. The house looked more like a museum than a home, glowing with a cold, expensive light. Julia's hand trembled as we walked up the stone path, past the fountain and the manicured grounds. I thought about the truth in my pocket. I was ready to stop being the ghost in the machine. I rang the bell, and through the frosted glass I saw a figure approaching, but it wasn't her parents who opened the door. Carmen, the housekeeper, opened the door. Her face was a mask of professional neutrality, but I saw the apology in her eyes. She had served the Harringtons for 15 years. She knew exactly what kind of storm was brewing. As she took our coats, I looked past her into the foyer. The marble floors and the 6-figure chandelier told the same old story of excess, but there was no welcoming committee, just Carmen. This wasn't a family dinner. It was a cold business transaction. Douglas appeared moments later, carrying himself with the unearned confidence of an empire builder. At 70, he still used a handshake designed to dominate, squeezing too hard and holding too long. I met his gaze without flinching until he was forced to pull away, a flicker of irritation crossing his face. His warmth was reserved only for Julia, whom he embraced with a patronizing affection. To him, I was just the mistake his daughter had made. In the living room, Evelyn rose from her chair like a queen granting an audience. Her pearls were perfect, her smile was sharp, and her perfume cost more per ounce than most people's monthly groceries. She offered me an air kiss that never made contact, her eyes remaining cold. Then there was Quinn, our 18-year-old daughter, sprawled on the sofa and glued to her phone. She didn't even look up. The distance between us had grown into a chasm. Douglas gestured us toward the dining room. The table was set for 5, though it could seat 12. The arrangement was a calculated power move. Douglas at the head, Evelyn to his right, and Quinn beside her. Julia and I were placed on the opposite side, physically isolated and outnumbered. It was the seating chart of a courtroom, defendant and counsel on one side, judge and prosecution on the other. As Carmen poured the wine, Douglas raised his glass for a toast. He spoke of legacy and securing the future, words that felt more like threats than well wishes. We drank and the first course arrived. Seared scallops served with a level of pretension that made eating feel like an obligation. Douglas began lecturing me on his latest project, a multi-billion-dollar development. He spoke to me like a slow-learning student, never realizing that I was the one who had actually greenlit the funding for that very project 18 months ago. Evelyn soon pivoted the conversation toward Preston Chambers, an old flame of Julia's who was now a wealthy bachelor with a massive portfolio. The implication was clear. Julia could have had a life of Architectural Digest gardens if she hadn't settled for me. Then Quinn chimed in, bragging about the strategic responsibilities her grandfather had given her. She looked at me with pure contempt, mocking my consulting work as mere paper shuffling. Then she dropped the bomb. She asked her mother if she ever regretted marrying someone without actual ambition, someone who wouldn't embarrass her at the country club. The room went cold. Quinn wasn't just being a teenager. She was speaking with the full, inherited cruelty of the Harrington bloodline. Julia's hand trembled as she set down her fork. "That is your father you're speaking to," she said, her voice wavering. "I know exactly who he is," Quinn replied. The way she said it, flat, final, and dismissive, stung worse than any insult from her grandparents. They were expected to look down on me, but Quinn was supposed to be different. She was the one I'd taught to ride a bike, the one I'd helped with every math assignment and cheered for at every game. Instead, she had become a perfect reflection of their coldness. The main course arrived, a beef dish that cost more per serving than our weekly grocery budget. Douglas continued as if Quinn's cruelty was just a casual observation. He spoke about the mindset of success and the vision required to operate at his level. I sat there, listening to him credit his leadership for expansions that only existed because I had quietly funneled billions into his failing projects. "You've been living on my capital for 25 years, I thought, but I remained silent. My stillness only seemed to infuriate them more. Evelyn turned to Julia with practiced pity, claiming they couldn't watch her struggle any longer. They were circling like sharks, each comment designed to remind me I was an outsider who needed to disappear. After a gold leaf dessert and coffee, the atmosphere shifted. Douglas and Evelyn exchanged a silent, knowing look. Then Douglas reached beneath his chair. His movements were deliberate and theatrical. He placed a leather folder on the table between the crystal glasses. The soft thud echoed like a gunshot. Julia's hand found mine under the table. Her fingers were ice cold. Douglas looked at me with the expression of a man who had already won. "Owen," he said with chilling finality, "it's time for an honest talk about your future with this family." Douglas slid the folder toward me. "Go ahead, open it." Inside, drafted with expensive legal precision, was an annulment agreement. It was 20 pages of jargon that boiled down to a single point. My marriage was a mistake they intended to fix. Clipped to the front was a check for $275,000. It was roughly 7 years of a consultant's salary, just enough, they assumed, to make a man like me go away. "You married above your station, Owen," Douglas said, leaning back. "It's a fact, not an insult. Julia could have had anyone. We won't stand by while she settles for a life in East Austin with a 10-year-old car." Julia stood up so fast her chair screeched against the floor. "This is insane. You can't buy people," she cried. "The adults are talking, Julia," Douglas snapped, his voice heavy with the habit of command. He didn't even look at her. He kept his eyes on me, waiting for me to take the bait. Then Quinn spoke. "Mom," she said, her voice terrifyingly calm. Julia turned to her, desperate for support, but Quinn continued. "Grandmother is right. You deserve better than him. Everyone can see he's holding you back." She looked at me with a cold, calculated judgment. "You're not good enough for her, Dad. You never were. Just take the money and go." "You'd be doing everyone a favor," Quinn continued, her voice cutting through the silence. "Mom could be with someone like Preston, someone with a real future who wouldn't embarrass her." That word, embarrass, hung in the air like gunsmoke. Julia finally broke, sobbing into her hands as something inside her shattered beyond repair. I wanted to reach for her, but I was frozen. I'd spent 14 months preparing for this moment, but watching your own daughter measure your soul and discard you is a pain no amount of preparation can dull. I had loved Julia without conditions. I had swallowed every slight from her parents, believing that character mattered more than income. I thought time would soften them, but I realized tonight that money edits every story for people like the Harringtons. They weren't offering a choice, they were erasing me. And the cruelest part wasn't the check, it was the realization that they viewed love as a failed business venture that needed liquidation. Douglas watched my silence with smug satisfaction. Quinn had already gone back to her phone. I picked up the check, letting them believe they had won. "That's generous," I said quietly. Douglas actually smiled. I set the check down and pulled out my phone. "Before I respond, I need to make a quick call." Douglas frowned. "What does your attorney have to do with this?" I looked at him, really looked at the man who had spent 25 years accepting my money while dismissing my worth. "Everything," I replied. I dialed Julian Rhodes, the attorney who had managed my interests for 2 decades, and put him on speaker. Douglas stood up so fast his chair scraped the floor. "What are you doing?" "Put that away." "No, Douglas, we're at the end of a conversation." Julian answered on the 4th ring. I asked him to pull up the Hartley Holdings file and explain the ownership of Harrington Development Group to the room. Julian's voice filled the dining room. Harrington Development Group, total valuation, $20 billion, 100 million shares outstanding. Evelyn inhaled sharply. Primary shareholder. Hartley Holdings LLC owning 47% of the equity. "That's impossible," Douglas whispered, his face going pale. "Secondary shareholder, Douglas Harrington owning 18%, Julian continued. Evelyn turned to her husband, horrified. 18, you told me you own the majority." Quinn finally dropped her phone. "Wait, who owns Hartley Holdings?" "Hartley Holdings is a single-member company," Julian said firmly. "Sole owner Owen Hartley. He has been the majority shareholder since 2008. The silence was absolute. Douglas sank into his chair like a puppet with cut strings. I had Julian walk them through the timeline, how I bought distressed shares at 32 cents on the dollar during the financial crisis, how I funded the Continental acquisition, how I greenlit the very tower Douglas was bragging about earlier. Every time you needed capital and the bank said no, I said yes, I told him. I was never a mystery investor, Douglas, I was your son-in-law. Evelyn's hand went to her throat. "But you drive a 15-year-old Honda." "I know. I also own half of your world, both can be true." Julia was crying beside me, but she wouldn't let go of my hand. Quinn stared at me. "You've been rich this whole time while we lived in that apartment." "We lived within our means, Quinn." "We lived honestly." I turned back to Douglas. "My grandfather, Robert Hartley, was your partner. He left me instructions to save your company and save you from yourself. You were falling again, Douglas, trying to sell the company to Preston Chambers behind the majority shareholder's back. That would be me." I stood up, helping Julia to her feet. "You offered me $275,000 to leave my wife. That's roughly 3 hours of my dividend income. I don't want your money. I wanted a family, but you only value control." I picked up the check to keep as a reminder of what I will never accept again. "There's a board meeting Monday morning, Douglas. We're going to discuss leadership changes. And Quinn, your position at the firm is terminated, not as punishment, but as an education. Learn what it means to build something yourself." We walked out into the Texas night. Behind us, the house of cards was collapsing. As we drove away in my old Accord, Julia leaned against me, still shaking. The reckoning had begun. I had saved the company just like my grandfather asked, but tonight, I finally saved myself. "This is impossible," Douglas whispered, his voice cracking. "Hartley Holdings is an institution. I thought it was a pension fund." "You never asked," I replied, "because the money always arrived when you needed it." I let each revelation hit like a physical blow. When he wanted to expand, the capital appeared. When the floods nearly drowned his assets, a silent partner held the line. Every success he celebrated at his country club was built on decisions I approved and risks I underwrote. "You work for me, Douglas, you just didn't know it." Evelyn made a sound, half gasp, half sob. Her carefully curated world was disintegrating in real time. I turned to my daughter, Quinn. At 18, she had been so certain of her dismissals. She looked small now, and a part of me wanted to protect her, but she had made her choice. She had weighed her father and found him lacking. Now she would learn what that scale actually measured. "Quinn," I said gently, "I wanted to know if you valued character or wealth. Tonight, I have my answer." Her face went pale as I told her that her position at the company was terminated effective immediately. She needed to learn what it meant to build a career without a safety net or a famous last name. "Daddy, please," she whispered, using a word she hadn't used in years, but it was too late. I picked up the pieces of the torn check and let them fall like ashes. I never wanted their approval or their status. I wanted a family that measured worth by character, not credit scores. "You only saw someone beneath you," I said. "You never asked why I lived the way I did. You never considered it was a choice." Douglas tried to protest, claiming he built the company. "No," I cut him off. "You drove it to bankruptcy. I saved it." While you took the credit, I was the one ensuring the deals closed. I informed them that an emergency board meeting was set for Monday morning to remove him as CEO and install professional management. This is everything I am, Douglas choked out. Then it's time you became something else, I said quietly. I turned to Julia. She was crying, but she took my hand without hesitation. That was 21 years of real marriage. As we walked toward the door, Douglas started to stand, flushed with rage. Sit down, I commanded. I'm not finished. This wasn't the quiet son-in-law they knew. This was the majority owner who had been protecting the firm from Douglas's disastrous decisions for years. I pulled out another envelope. I knew about his secret merger negotiations with Preston Chambers. Evelyn's head snapped toward her husband. What merger? I revealed the emails. Douglas had been planning to sell the company behind the board's back to cover his own massive losses. You need $10 billion because you've lost over $200 million in gambling and bad crypto trades, I said. Evelyn stared at her husband in horror. He had a second mortgage on their house and had been robbing the company to pay personal debts. Quinn watched her hero crumble. Tonight wasn't about family. It was about Douglas's desperation to finalize a deal before his fraud was discovered, but the deal was already dead. Preston Chambers' team had discovered my holdings months ago. Just then, the doorbell rang. Carmen appeared looking confused. Mr. Preston Chambers is here, she said. He says he was invited to finalize the paperwork. I smiled. This was about to get interesting. Preston walked in, looking like he owned the world until he saw the wreckage of the dinner table. Douglas, he said, his confidence wavering. I think I'm interrupting. Mr. Chambers, I said, facing him. I'm Owen Hartley. I believe you know exactly who I am. Preston nodded. I've known for 6 months. My team discovered Hartley Holdings owns 47%. I realized any deal required your signature, not Douglas's. He looked at Douglas with pure contempt. You tried to sell me a company you don't control, Douglas. I was just curious to see how deep your deception ran. Preston Chambers let the word fraud hang in the air like a heavy curtain. That isn't just bad business, Douglas, he said coldly. That's a crime and I don't partner with frauds. Evelyn gasped and Quinn's sobbing filled the room. Preston turned to me, his tone shifting to one of genuine professional respect. He apologized for not reaching out sooner, admitting he'd known about my 47% stake for 6 months. He handed me his card, offering a legitimate partnership whenever I was ready. He looked at Julia one last time, expressing regret that she had been used as a pawn by her own parents, then he walked out. The silence that followed was absolute. Douglas looked 20 years older, his empire and his secrets gone in a single night. Evelyn was on the floor, her carefully polished life shattered. Quinn's face was buried in her hands. Her idol had been revealed as a desperate gambler. I should have felt victorious, but I just felt exhausted. I wasn't done yet. I pulled out a yellowed envelope, sealed 25 years ago by my grandfather, Robert Hartley. There's something you need to hear, Douglas, I said. Something my grandfather wanted you to know. Douglas looked up, his eyes hollow. I broke the seal and began to read. I reminded him that Robert didn't leave 30 years ago because of a simple disagreement. He left because he caught Douglas bribing inspectors and using substandard materials. He left because he wouldn't compromise his soul for a 15% construction savings. I read the letter aloud. My grandfather had known Douglas would fall again. He instructed me to help him, not because he deserved it, but because his family did. He told me that wealth without character is worthless and that the measure of a man is what he does with what he has. Don't do this for revenge, he wrote. Do it for redemption. Douglas was sobbing openly now. It wasn't a performance. It was the raw grief of a man realizing he'd spent decades running from a truth someone had tried to teach him out of love. Robert never gave up on you, I told him. I've been fulfilling his dying wish for 25 years, protecting what you two built together, waiting for you to be ready to learn. I laid out the terms. The board meeting on Monday would still happen. Douglas would be removed as CEO. There was no coming back from the fraud. However, he would be offered an advisory role 2 days a week, but only if he was willing to learn humility. Only if he was willing to become the man my grandfather believed he could be. I held out my hand to Julia. She took it without hesitation. We walked out of that museum of a house, leaving the Harringtons to sit with the wreckage of their choices. The drive back to East Austin was only 10 miles, but it felt like traveling between planets. We drove in silence for a long time, the city lights of Austin glowing in the distance, our city, our real home. Finally, Julia asked how long I'd been planning this. I told her the truth. The investment was old, but the test had only been the last 14 months. She asked why I hadn't told her sooner. I needed you to know, I said quietly, that I chose you when there was nothing to gain. I loved you for exactly who you are. She processed that in silence, 21 years of defending me against her family's contempt, 21 years of wondering if she'd given up too much. We talked about Quinn, about the pain of watching her become what we tried to protect her from. I pulled the car over and we both finally let the tears come. The weight of 2 decades of silence finally lifted. What happens now? She asked. I told her the company would survive and the fraud would stop. Whether Douglas chose redemption or walked away was up to him, but for us, the secrets were over. The company is protected now, I told Julia, but as for us, that's your choice. I understand if keeping this secret for 21 years is too much to forgive. Julia didn't hesitate. She reached for my hand and looked me in the eye. I chose the man who shared a studio apartment with me and made spaghetti on a hot plate. I chose you every single day for 23 years because you never made me feel like choosing you was choosing less. I love you, Silas, not the majority shareholder, just you. A weight I'd carried for decades finally evaporated. We drove home to our modest house on Holly Street. It felt ordinary and perfect. Inside, Julia asked about the money. I told her it was ours to use for a foundation, for scholarships, for helping our neighbors stay in their homes as the city changed. But we were staying right here. I didn't need a mansion in the hills. I already had a home. Monday morning was a different story. I walked into the 23rd floor of the tower I had personally financed 12 years ago. The boardroom was filled with executives who had spent years under Douglas's thumb. Douglas arrived last, looking gray and defeated. He took a seat at the far end of the table, no longer the head of the empire, just a man waiting for his fate. The numbers were laid out with surgical precision. My attorney, Julian, presented the 47% ownership stake. No one defended Douglas. There were no grand speeches, just a vote, 78% in favor of his removal. Effective immediately, Douglas Harrington was no longer the CEO. He gathered his things and walked out in a silence that felt heavier than any shout. I felt no victory, only exhaustion. I didn't want to run the company, so I installed a professional management team to lead the transition. While I stayed in the shadows, the reckoning hit home. Quinn left a dozen voicemails I wasn't ready to hear. Without the Harrington name to open doors, her job offers vanished. The real world was finally introducing itself to her. By Wednesday, Julia's resolve began to crack. She was exhausted from the silence. I want to be angry, she admitted, but I keep thinking of my dad sitting alone with that letter. I told her that being human means feeling both anger and compassion, and that she got to set the terms for what happened next. That afternoon, a courier delivered a handwritten letter from Evelyn. It was 3 pages of raw, shaky script. She confessed that for 21 years, she had viewed Julia's marriage as a personal failure. She admitted she hated that Julia was happy without the material things Evelyn used to build her own identity. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Evelyn wrote. I'm writing to tell you that I see you now. I see a woman with courage I'll never possess. I'm sorry it took 21 years and your husband's devastating grace to open my eyes. She signed it simply as your mother and asked for a chance to become the parent Julia deserved. Julia cried as she read it. She's trying to be different, she whispered. She's trying, I agreed. Whether she succeeds is up to her. Julia typed a response, Friday night, 7:00 p.m. at our house. Casual clothes, no gifts, no pretense, just family. Evelyn replied instantly, we'll be there, thank you. Julia set the phone down, her eyes red but clear. Friday. Oh God, Silas, what if this is a mistake? Then we'll deal with it together, I said, just like we always have. I truly believe your mother meant every word of that letter. The small details, like the arthritis and the admission of her own bitterness, those aren't manipulation tactics. I think they are finally terrified of losing you, and sometimes fear is a more powerful motivator than love ever was. Julia nodded, putting away groceries with shaking hands. That night, she read the letter over and over by the light of her phone before curling against me. She thanked me for letting her find her own pace. I told her that hope isn't naive, it's brave. We had 3 days to prepare for a dinner that would either be a new beginning or the final end of our family. When they arrived on Friday, they looked smaller. Douglas still had the posture of an executive, but something inside him had softened. Evelyn held a simple bouquet of sunflowers from the local farmer's market, not the expensive florist she usually favored. Julia stood frozen at the door, face to face with her mother for the first time since the reckoning. These are for you, Evelyn whispered, her voice cracking. The woman at the market said they represent endurance. Douglas stepped forward and shook my hand. I noticed he had arrived in a used Camry. He'd sold the luxury cars, wanting to understand what normal felt like. As they walked into our 800-square-foot home, Douglas looked at our wall of photos, young, broke, and happy. "It feels lived in," he noted. "The house in Westlake is 5 times this size, but it's just a showcase. It's never felt like a home." Julia cooked her specialty, spaghetti with homemade marinara. Douglas pulled a $12 bottle of wine from a canvas bag, noting it paired well with Italian food. We sat around our worn wooden table, no one at the head, just 4 people attempting something fragile. Douglas didn't wait long to speak. He admitted that for 21 years he had tried to make me feel small. He confessed that the check was a calculated insult, a way to throw a number in my face. "The cruelest part," he said, his voice rough, "is that you were the one saving us while I treated you like you were worthless. You were fulfilling a promise to my father's partner, and I repaid you with humiliation." Evelyn turned to Julia, tears tracking through her makeup. "I taught you that your value came from who you married. I spent 21 years mourning the life I thought you deserved, never seeing the beautiful life you actually built. You wanted a man of integrity, and I called that a failure." She looked at both of us. "And Quinn, we poisoned her. What she said at that dinner, those were our words coming out of her mouth. I accepted their apologies, but I made it clear. If we were to rebuild, it had to be real. No more judgment based on status or appearance." Julia told them she wanted a relationship, but not the old one. She wouldn't apologize for choosing love. "We want to know you really know you," Evelyn said urgently. We started small. A dinner every few weeks at our place. No performance, just honest talk. We clinked glasses to family, not the one we performed for others, but the one we actually were. The evening stretched late into the night. We even washed the dishes together, a strangely domestic scene after such a seismic shift. When they left, Evelyn hugged Julia with a fierceness she'd withheld for decades. Months passed, spring arrived in Austin, and with it, a sense of lasting change. Under new leadership, the company stock climbed, focusing now on community needs rather than just ego. Douglas continued in his advisory role, actually listening to young architects and learning about sustainability. He told me he valued their brilliance, a humility I'd never heard from him before. But the most profound change was the Hartley Family Foundation. We launched it with a $75 million endowment to fund scholarships and housing assistance. Julia transitioned into the role of director with a natural grace. She'd always had the capacity for leadership, she just needed the permission to use it. "These are the people society expects to fail," Julia told a room full of donors last month. "The ones working 2 jobs, the single mothers studying on the bus, the people with no safety net. If we give them a fighting chance, they will change the world." I watched from the back of the room as Julia transformed wealth into purpose. She left me breathless. Even more shocking was Evelyn. She had become one of our most dedicated volunteers, putting in 15 hours a week doing the grunt work she once found unthinkable. She wasn't planning galas anymore. She was making coffee for scholarship recipients and helping families navigate rent assistance. She looked at me recently and said, "I wasted so much time chasing things that didn't matter. Thank you for loving Julia better than we did." Our bi-weekly dinners are the new normal. Douglas and Evelyn arrive at our modest home every other Friday. They bring farmers market flowers and mid-range wine. They help with the dishes. It's not perfect. Evelyn still offers unsolicited advice, and Douglas sometimes slips into CEO mode, but it's real. It's a family. Quinn's absence still hangs over us, but she sent me a letter 6 weeks ago. She wrote it from a coffee shop nearby, though she wasn't ready to knock on the door yet. She's working an entry-level marketing job, living in a tiny studio, and taking the bus. She wrote, "I'm happier than I've ever been because I'm building something that is actually mine. I'm working on becoming someone worthy of your forgiveness." I showed the letter to Julia, who wanted to bring her home immediately. I suggested we wait. Quinn is learning to stand on her own, and that's a gift we can't take from her. I finally sent her a text. "I'm proud of you for creating value instead of just claiming it. When you're ready, our door is open. You're my daughter and I love you. Take your time." As I sat in my 15-year-old Accord, watching the downtown lights, I realized that 3 months ago I was a billionaire carrying 2 decades of secrets. Today I'm just Owen Hartley, a man heading home to a wife who chose him when he had nothing to offer but honesty. The company is thriving under ethical leadership. The foundation is changing lives. Douglas is a mentor instead of a tyrant. Evelyn has found purpose in service, and Quinn is becoming someone remarkable. Tonight, Julia and I stood on our back porch. She asked if I ever regretted letting them humiliate me for 21 years. I told her never, because now I know for certain that her parents love her more than their pride, and I know that she chose me for exactly who I am. "Who are you really, Owen Hartley?" she asked with a smile. "I'm a husband first," I said, pulling her close. "I'm a man who proved that being underestimated is a superpower if you use it to show people grace instead of vengeance. The greatest victories aren't the ones where you crush your enemies, they're the ones that change hearts. We are rich in the only ways that count, not in what we own, but in who we've become. We proved that power without humility destroys, but family built on truth can survive anything. If you're living a story of betrayal or being made to feel less than, don't wait 21 years to speak your truth. Character outlasts comfort every time. Stand up for your marriage, live your worth daily, and remember that the truest form of strength is offering a second chance to those who haven't earned it yet. Have you ever faced a family that didn't see your true value? Share your story in the comments. Your journey might be the light someone else needs to find their way home. Like, subscribe, and share this with someone navigating a complicated family dynamic. There is always a way back to the truth.